Hello, everyone. In this section of Module 1, we'll be examining science and its origins, as well as, what is life? What is the scientific nature of life? I think they unify themselves together because we've got to ground this idea of what science can do and what it can tell us about ourselves. All right, so what I have for you in place here are two visual viewings. The first one is a video called Wonders of What is Life? And then I'll be doing that. I'll do a summary of that. I'll do a What is Life summary, a really short sort of synopsis of what sort of actually happened. And there are two PowerPoint lectures. And again, if you don't have, yes, the software for this, you can get it from Microsoft 365. Just log in with your student account. And lastly, I want you to look at exploration, the exploration text. That's the one I provided with you. Look at chapter 1, pages 11 through 22. That's your assignment here. Now, next, the video that I'm posting right now, if you've looked at this section before and you find this video has changed, it has. This is a replacement video. And the reason I replaced it is that I mentioned a paper called The Development of Science by Peter Price that I removed from the syllabus and the course content, but I didn't change the video. And people are hunting and looking for that paper, and I really apologize for that, so I want to correct that right now. That won't be a reading. And I principally removed that reading because so much of the information in that paper is reiterated in the lectures that I put out, and as well as the movie you're looking at, What is Science, and the reading too. So I just don't want you to have to put the extra hour, hour and a half of reading in when you're going to receive the same information. All right, so let's begin. Science is incredibly important to what we do. So anytime you see a course that ends in ology, like biology, anthropology, and ology is the scientific study of something. For anthropology, of course, it's anthro, which is human, so it's a scientific study of humans. So it sort of puts upon ourselves to try to understand, what science is. Well, first of all, a way to think about this is science is not a result. It is a way of thinking. It's a process, a way of investigating reality on what can be sensed, right? And making some interpretations on what can be sensed and actually known. In other words, we rely on the only senses in which we have taste, touch, sight, hearing and smell. And essentially, if we can't detect the world this way, we have to build instrumentation that allows it to translate information to our senses so that we can actually interpret reality to see what's going on. So we're dealing with real knowable facts and trying to make interpretations of the world based on this. Now, this is very different than another type of fact that our society generally runs on. It's called social facts. Social facts are things we think are true, and we begin to discuss them so much upon themselves, they receive what we call an air of factuality. And our lives are dominated by this right now. Of course, during the times of COVID, you can see this. And there's a scientific interpretation of what COVID is, the dangers of it. And of course, there's the social facts, right? And that's the whirlwind political challenges of not the factual world, but if things are hammered out to you in the political stratum of propaganda, you begin to believe it and share it among each other. Now, the social facts aren't things in which scientists are really interested, except for a phenomenon of, again, what it is to be human. I think that's one of the things we're trying to sense in this course. We don't deal with social facts. We deal with real knowable facts because it's the only way you can wheedle fact from fiction. All right. So how is it that we go about doing this? Well, that's the purpose of the videos and the lectures that I have before you. But one thing I want you to think about when we think about the scientific method, I just want you to break it down into four very, very simple components. We see patterns in the world. We see patterns, right? And then what we want to do is make a hypothesis, try to figure out a way in which we can figure out what are the causes of these patterns, what does the cause affect relationships, right? And then we test those relationships. Okay? That's what hypothesis, we're testing those relationships. And then we're getting results to see if they confirm a hypothesis, right? And then we move on and create bigger knowable hypotheses about the way we bring things together to bigger, larger truths. In other words, science is building on a foundation of small little finds, building and building and building to build much greater universal truths. So this section is about the sort of universal truths in which we're finding about and what they can actually say about life. And it's taken a lot of building blocks to get here because life is really actually very complicated. But with the scientific method, we're able to put what life is in a little better perspective. And that's what this sort of segment is actually about. All right. So One of the things I want you to think about, which you're watching the Wonders of Life video, I think it's very important, is Brian Cox comes from this as the perspective of a physicist. All right, now a physicist who also has deep interest in anthropology, and he entered anthropology in a highly interdisciplinary sort of way. And really, that's really what it takes to advance knowledge now. Most of the disciplines that you're taking courses from are beginning to collapse and become interdisciplinary. Like we use a tremendous amount of geology, paleontology, physics and chemistry, meteorology, paleoclimatology, all of these sort of specialty folks out there to work with us to bring some truth and cast some scientific information and enlightenment into what it is to be human and how we've evolved. Well, Cox does this in a different way to try to define what life is in itself. And I think that's the heartbeat of what we have to really start with. We're looking at where the universe comes from and ultimately where life comes from and how do we know this? And how is life part of the universe? So when he approaches this, he's going to be approaching this from a physics perspective by bringing in what we call the elementary laws of thermodynamics, right? And they're actually very, very simple. So when he starts mentioning some of these laws, don't think about numbers and equations. Just think about sort of concepts. How is it that humans follow these natural laws? And what are some of his examples? And he'll write some of those examples down. I don't want you to have to figure out what the law of thermodynamics is. We're not going that. But hear what he's saying and how science casts a new way in which we can envision humans. Ultimately, what we're trying to get at in the aim of science is that we get past just mere finding out what something is and how it works, but getting enough observation together to collectively figure out what something might mean, right? And that's one of the reasons that science can be very boring to people is because it doesn't shed meaning right off the bat. I mean, you can look at like a chemistry reaction and something in the test tube turns blue, and then you can figure out what chemical reaction and why the wavelength was absorbed in some way, and that might be an interesting observation. But what the heck does that mean to you? It has zero meaning whatsoever. And primarily, what humans are is they're meaning-making machines. We require meaning in our lives, and most students have been turned away from science because it doesn't, engender that. We're approaching something different now. The sum total of the scientific observations we're making are creating profound meanings for humans, trying to figure out where we are and what we might be supposed to be doing, creating meaning and purpose within our lives. That social facts have created what the purpose of a human and who we think we are. And the reality is we might be something different and should be doing something different, maybe in a collective, more ecological sort of way for the world around you. And it will give us a new, peaceful, harmonious, and equitable society. That's what I hope that the goals of scientific exploration are. And I hope that's what you take from this segment. All right. So make sure you watch the summary of Water is Life after you finish it. Again, any questions on this, make sure you get a hold of me, voice or text. Secondarily, email, only because voice or text is much faster. All right. Bye.